Well, here's where it's interesting to look at. In my great granduncle's world,
Mhm.
where did myth originate? What did he know back in 1890 when he started writing this book? That's where my consciousness is. And you have to understand the context of what he was living in. The Victorian era in the late 1800s was beginning to have science enter into the picture more so than ever before. Religion was being going down, science was coming up, and in between, superstition and folklore was
Yeah.
answering a lot of questions for
Yeah.
people who were allowed. In the research that I've done, I've found the books that Bram Stoker read in the London Library that pointed out the different places that have people have believed in this myth of the vampire. He gave one interview by a lady named Jane Stoddard in the British weekly newspaper only 4 months after the book came out. It's the only interview anybody's ever asked him. And she asked him, how do you explain the myth of the vampire? He said, it's very powerful. It exists in many countries. Oh, where? She said. And he listed 12 countries that he found that had some version of a creature that we would now call a vampire. And I'll say this, and I'm going to say this very slowly. I'm telling you what I believe Bram Stoker was interested in and what he was using for his research. But now I'm going to tell you what I believe he believed. Opened up the grave. They cut open his chest. They took out the heart, took it to the crossroads, burned it, and made ashes from the suspected vampire heart, boiled it in water, and gave it to this young girl. And in 3 days, she got better. And I know this was real because a very good friend of mine, an Irish guy, is married to the Romanian lady whose mother was the lawyer in charge of this area. So this was not a made up story. And it's now part of a documentary film. I had a feeling when I was doing all my research for the very first book, Dracula the Undead, that there must have been something special in Bram Stoker's life that allowed him to recover from a very mysterious 7-year illness.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it didn't make sense. There was no medicine in those days. They could have fixed him to go from an invalid to a champion athlete in 10 years. So it was like, there must have been something there. What is it? So that's when I started looking into the family and I found letters. I found that they really did have this nanny, and her name was Ellen Crone. And she came to the Stoker family as an orphan. Actually went to Trinity College and looked in the archives of what my family has donated. And I found a letter from Ellen Crone to the brother Thornley Stoker.
Wow.
And it had some of her hair
Of
in
Ellen
the
Cron.
envelope. Yeah, still.
Wow.